This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. Manchester United lose to Grimsby Town in the Carabao Cup on penalties. So many penalties, so much rain. Eventually, Brian and Bumo, second time around, hit the bar, and that was that. Grimsby were brilliant. Amorim's men were lucky to get to penalties. Grimsby 2 up in a dominant first half. Were unlucky to have a third ruled out before Manchester United showed some resolve in the last 15 minutes. Ruben Amorim says something has to change. You wonder exactly what that could be. From crisis to existential angst, Fitbar, with Rangers and Celtic trying to outdo each other night after night. Ewan Murray joins us against his will, and then a Premier League preview including Liverpool-Arsenal. Jonathan Wilson's written a book. Thank goodness we needed another one. He'll try and sell it to us. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Jonathan Wilson, welcome.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Congratulations on writing a book.
Thank you.
We'll talk about it soon. From the Racing Post, Mark Langdon, hello.
Hi, Max.
And welcome, Robyn Cowen.
Good morning, Max.
There is only one place to start, and that is Grimsby. Grimsby 2, Manchester United 2 in the second round of the Carabao Cup. Grimsby winning 12-11 on penalties. Won't someone think of the parents of small children when they keep scoring these penalties? United never lost to a fourth-tier side in the League Cup. Moby Duck says, does this show Man United can beat anyone in League 2? I mean, the shootout, Robyn, was hilarious, wasn't it? Because you felt like it would never, ever end.
It did. There's been a real contrast, hasn't there, over the Carabao Cup, because I'll get to it, I'm sure, but the Sheffield Wednesday Leeds one was like the complete opposite. No, it was ridiculous. I mean, it was a fantastic game, wasn't it? Cup tie, obviously, excluding those of Manchester United persuasion. You're absolutely right. You said in your intro, Grimsby really should have won it really in normal time, shouldn't they? They missed a hatload of chances, had a goal ruled out for offside, which I know is a bit contentious. There's a few people saying that possibly shouldn't have been. And then the rain. Oh, the rain. And Ruben Amorim's laminated tactic sheet. And that was my first thought was, I wouldn't have to laminate things if I was still in Lisbon. And that's possibly, I think possibly the only thing keeping him there is that payout, isn't it? Because he just looks like he's hating every single second, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was so wet that you would have. It's elite sports people. Maybe they don't feel the same, but I did think the little tactics things were a bit small, weren't they? On the laminate, was he sort of moving them around? Like it was hard to get them in your fingers when it was so wet.
It was almost like a sort of fidget spinner almost. It wasn't to do with anything. It was just to kind of keep him calm, maybe. It was just wonderful cup tie, wasn't it? Just loads of. I mean, that's going to be a meme. It's an instant classic.
Yeah, I agree. What did you make of it, Mark?
Well, Robyn mentioned memes, and it's sort of that Mick McCarthy one, isn't it? Where you sort of ask, they can't get any worse, can they, Mick? And he says they can, and it just feels like sort of Manchester United are stuck in this sort of never-ending sort of downward spiral at the moment. Maybe we should start with Grimsby and just how great they were as a team from the fourth tier to, I think, outplay Manchester United for an hour is some effort, even if it was a Change United team and they're not in a good space. But it comes back to something you said a few weeks ago, Max. You was talking sense around kind of players from these sort of lower leagues have been really good. At one stage, they were the best in their class, the best at, Pim, for instance. I think he played for England under 20s or certainly around England junior teams, but he's only 6 foot. So that makes it hard, I think, for him to go on and become kind of maybe as successful as he would have hoped to have been when he was a junior. Warren spent more than a decade at Manchester United. Vernon was had a trials with AC Milan. McEachran was at Chelsea. So, these players have, been around sort of top levels previously, and we just felt like they were inspired and wanted, had a point to prove and really did prove it. There were opportunities. I mean, Burns missed a big one to make it 3-0 as well, but I thought Warren definitely felt like, so physical, and I mean, Seshko was in his pocket really for most of that game. We maybe get onto him later and how was it? It took the 10th Manchester United.
We'll get onto it. We'll go through each player on when they took a penalty. So we'll get to Sesko by about hour 2.
But I thought McEachran was very good. And it wasn't even necessarily Grimsby's first choice team either. They made a couple of changes from the weekend. Yeah, I mean, a shameful night for Manchester United, but a great one for Grimsby and their manager, Dave Artell.
Yeah, who was loving it, wasn't it? Actually, Barry says, how bad is it for United when Dave Artell of Grimsby's giving a quasi-Pep, so good post-match interview? So Artell said, look, they're an unbelievable team, Manchester United. They've got an unbelievable manager, and they're on the right track. You can see that. And I have to say, I mean, he didn't put a foot wrong, Dave Artell, yesterday, and he was brilliant. I loved him just laughing through the penalties, because obviously it sort of didn't matter, but it did. But I don't think, I'd like to ask him, where can you see this Man United team are on the right track, Wilson? Because the biggest surprise of this game was so many times Grimsby were just kind of through. Like Grimsby played through United way more than United played through Grimsby.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every counter-attack, they look dangerous. Every set play, they look dangerous. And I guess you'd say for a fourth-flight team to beat a top-flight team, set plays often are somewhere where they can challenge them. But we've seen United really struggle with set plays both against Fulham and against Arsenal. Well, and constantly last season. They're really bad at defending in-swingers. Maybe because they've made 2 changes to the back 3, maybe that's semi-understandable. But it's not really acceptable. But I think the bigger problem, or the more sort of long-term problem, is that shape. The one advantage, I think, of the 3-4-2-1 is that you should always have the back 3 with 2 players sitting in front, creating that sort of 3-2 shape, which is the basis of all defending against the counter-attack. Almost every team does that 3-2. It goes 100 years ago when the WM comes in, it gives you that 3-2 shape. And it is proved over 100 years the best way of dealing with counters. Guardiola's sides, they try and have 5 men behind the ball at all times, and the 5 will be in roughly that 3-2 shape. How you create that, whether it's one fullback goes up and the other shuffle across, whether it's John Stones stepping in midfield, whether it's a fullback stepping in alongside the holding midfield to create the 3-2, that's the basis of it. The big advantage the 3-4-2-1 should give you is you should have that solid block, and you should at the very least be hard to play through. And they're dead easy to play through. So even on its own terms, the formation, the system is not working.
Yeah. And Robyn, I mean, with all due respect and praise to Grimsby, it's Grimsby, for goodness sake.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt about it. They should be beating Grimsby, shouldn't they? They should. I mean, pretty much, any team that's higher than Grimsby should be beaten. I mean, it's just, I think that the demise of Manchester United, it's kind of, it's still shocking, because I think even just a couple of years ago, they would have made hard work of it, but they would have got through and would have criticised how poor Manchester United were, but they would have got through this. Now, I mean, I actually don't know where they go from here. People were sort of really grasping for green shoots of recovery in the first couple of games of the season.
I mean, they have played okay in those first couple of games, but, they are, what have they got, 1 point? I mean, Amorim afterwards said, I think this is a little bit the limit. He didn't say totally this is the limit. Like, it could get worse. Something has to change. In this moment, we need to focus on the weekend. Then we have time to think. Everything was wrong. The way we started the game, we were not even here. When everything is so important in our club, everything that happened, it's a problem in our club. We should do so much better. I just have to say sorry to our fans. After the game, he said, I felt my players spoke really loud today about what they want. Like, what do you think, Mark? I mean, it's never felt good with Amorim there. Like, he came, and lots of people say he came at a bad time. He did. He turned up in November, no pre-season, changed the shape without the personnel.
Yeah, well, you say that. The reason for sticking with him is that at some stage you have to stick with something. That seems to be the sort of, I don't even know if that is logic, but that seems to be the logic behind, we need to back something. But what if you're just backing the wrong one? And he's making significant changes and has been allowed to make those changes, just like Erik ten Hag was. So if you do get rid of him, and then you bring in a coach that actually doesn't believe in wing backs, and you go, oh, we've just bought Dorgu and we're trying to build around, or whatever it is they're trying to build around. You're starting again. I personally wouldn't sack him on the back of just a cup defeat to Grimsby, and I think you do have to give him more of this season with his team to prove that he's not the right person or is the right person. But things do need to change somewhere. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me to be so wedded to one formation no matter what else is going on. I think you can have a philosophy and a way that you want to play, but I don't. To me, that you're just limiting yourself if you only. Like Mason Mount came on and was playing, I think, left wing back. When it became a mess, really. Maybe it was that sort of tactics board, and people didn't quite understand. But I think Mason Mount was playing left wing back. I don't understand that. For example, whatever midfield he tries doesn't work. I mean, Ugarte and Mainu, some people think that it should be Manchester United sort of two in front and should be more solid than, say, Casemiro and Fernandes. But I mean, it was no better than anything we'd seen previously. I didn't like the way, I don't know if I'm becoming a proper football man here, but I didn't like the way that he hid in the penalty shootout and wasn't with the rest of his staff and wasn't fronting up as a leader. I don't think it mattered for the end result, but the optics of that don't look great when you're sort of sat there in the dugout on your own.
Well, he didn't realise he'd be there for 2 hours, did he? I suppose.
no, but it doesn't feel amazing, that's for sure. But the United fans they didn't really turn on Ten Hag, did they? And they still seem to be backing Amorim as well. I don't know if they're doing that out of just blind loyalty to the club, but the match-going fan just hasn't turned really on the team or the manager at any stage during this sort of spiral.
But I wonder, Wilson, if they are still more unhappy with people above them. Simon says, Amorim is clearly struggling. Does there need to be more focus on Jason Wilcox or just United's recruitment, how they have such a bad midfield and goalkeeper?
Yeah, I mean, where do you start? But yes, the recruitment is clearly a problem, that they don't have a good goalkeeper. I mean, it's a minor, well, no, it's actually quite major in the context of last night. How weak are Onana's wrists? He got hands to, I think, 4 penalties. One of them, he just about pushed onto the bar. But even that, okay, it's a good save. If he's got strong wrists, doesn't have to hit the bar, just bounces clear. The other 3 go in. That seems. It seems. I know sometimes a shot is so hard or hits the wrong bit of the hand or something. There's nothing you can do about it. 4 times the same penalty shootout seems like a pattern, and it's not the first time we've seen it with Onana.
Does that mean the penalty taker on his drink bottle should have just kick it at Onana's hand? That is,
Well, hit the target. You're likely to score if it's Onana. I think is basically it. So I was just thinking of a if they did have a drinks bottle and then that amount of rainwater is sort of being washed out to sea, and it's rather than a message in a bottle, a message on a bottle. It'll wash up in some Pacific island in 20 years, and it'll say something like, Bruno Fernandes, stand still, or whatever. Yeah. So recruitment clearly is a problem, because I don't think the metaphor actually works. But let's go with it, because it's what is often used in football, that you have to start with the foundation. You don't build a house by putting the roof on first. And I don't, as I say, I don't think it does hold as a metaphor. But the fact that they have just built this incredibly expensive roof, and it's not just no foundations, there's not even any walls. Yeah. It's just sort of a roof suspended in the middle of nowhere. It's like a Victorian bandstand on very sort of rusty legs. And to accommodate Cunha and Mbeumo and Šeško, they've had to take 2 of the players who played quite well last season, Bruno Fernandes and Amad Diallo, and put them in different roles that don't seem to suit them particularly well. So bizarrely, they spent £200 million on forwards to make themselves even worse. We thought they couldn't make the squad with less fans, and yet somehow, fair play, they've achieved it. But there's also, I mean, I get Mark's point about you've got to give him time, but there's a massive danger of doing that, because why are you giving him time? What are you thinking is going to happen? You're showing faith. And it is faith. There's no evidence. It's faith this will come good. This is somebody who, 10 months in the job, he hasn't won 2 league games in a row yet.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I don't think there's been any sign
There is that guy saying, I'm not going to cut my hair till United win 5 games in a row. And then just someone
start with 2, mate.
and obviously his hair has got so ridiculous. But then someone tweeted yesterday, this guy's going to be the first person to die from having too much hair. It's a funny line. Sorry, I interrupted you, Wilson.
So he will only play this 3-4-2-1. I've got reservations about that as a system anyway. I think for a team that should have the ball, United are not Crystal Palace. It works really well. Because they don't need the ball. They play without the ball. They're really effective at doing so. Also, we've got the right players for it. That Wharton and Will Hughes recently are good. The back of midfield, you've got one who's really good at picking passes, one who's all energy, wins the ball back. You've then got 2 number 10s. I mean, okay, Ezra leaving causes problems, but yeah, maybe Yomi Pino can do that. But that they've got basically 2 6s and 2 10s in midfield, and that works. And because that's base of a 3 and a 2, you know that the team counters against you, you're solid. So that means your wing backs can play high up. Look at Sunday. Where does their goal come from? It comes from Tariq Mitchell getting down the left. His cross is cleared, but then Wharton pings it straight out to the right, and Daniel Munoz is in space because the whole defence has been dragged over by Mitchell. He's got time to measure his cross, and Sarr scores. So for Palace, it works because they got the players, and they're comfortable playing without the ball. They're a mid-table side, so playing reactive, counter-attacking football is fine for them. Manchester United, because of their stature, because of their tradition, can't do that. So I'm not sure how you ever play 3-4-2-1 when you're expecting to have the ball, because so much creativity comes down to the 2 number 10s. But then look at who they're trying to play in the deeper midfield. And the Casemiro of 5 years ago possibly could have done it. Even then, I'm not sure he quite had the energy, the stamina, the dynamism to do it at Premier League level. Possibly. Casemiro now certainly can't. Ugarte just doesn't look good enough to do it. Bruno Fernandes doesn't have the defensive capability, so you've got to have somebody alongside him who can play that with real aggression. I mean, basically you need N'Golo Kante alongside him. N'Golo Kante did play in the one side that's ever won the Premier League, playing the 3-4-2-1, which was Conte's Chelsea 2016-17. But he was playing alongside either Matic or Cesc Fabregas. So again, either a player who's really good at holding his position, tactically very intelligent, spreading the ball, or one of the best passers of the ball we've ever seen in the Premier League. You need very specific players, and cobbling that together with the offshoots of 6 different Manchester United managers is really hard. So I don't think the system is right anyway, even if everything is put in place and he has time and he can build a squad to do that. But also the cost of taking a squad that, for all it was a shambles and for all it was patched together from loads of different ideas, the one thing that unified it was it couldn't play 3-4-2-1. So you got to overhaul the entire squad. 20 players, 25 players you got to overhaul. Enormous cost. Because they're really bad at selling players, you got no PSR headroom to do that. So that's a really difficult thing to do. And the cost of doing that is you're going to lose Kobbie Mainoo. You're going to lose the best young player you brought through in a decade because he doesn't fit in that system. Do Manchester United really want to sacrifice Kobbie Mainoo on the altar of the Amorim faith, for which there is no evidence it is true? Amorim has not done a miracle. He has not turned water into wine. He has not raised Lazarus. He has not walked on water.
I mean, to be honest, he did sit in water yesterday.
But even that, the Mark talks about the optics of sitting in the dugout. That just says a man with no faith. Yeah, he has no faith in his squad. And if you are going to be a preacher, this messianic figure, pulling people along to your faith, to your dogma, you have to look like you believe it yourself. And you contrast that with, say, and this is not a particularly messianic figure or charismatic figure, but Rafa Benitez in the Liverpool-Chelsea semi-final, Champions League semi-final. And when the penalty started then, when it was against Mourinho, and he, obviously Rafa is very conscious of Mourinho's mind games, his attempts to gain psychological edge. What does Benitez do? He sits down cross-legged on the side of the pitch and looks like the calmest man in the stadium. And that just... it shouldn't make a difference, but I think that just radiates belief of, well, the manager just thinks we're going to win. The manager is so calm that he's sort of doing some sort of Zen pose.
He's turned into Yoda, hasn't he?
He's getting his morning yoga in early, rather than sitting on the bench rocking back and forth as the rain lashes down around you, and the angels weeping for the decline of Manchester United.
Robyn?
I think there is something in that, definitely. because I mean, I don't know how he is with the players in the dressing room or on the training ground. We don't know. But the image he projects to us is just a very sad, depressed individual. And I just don't think that's healthy for the players. My other point was just going to be that system, tactics, whatever, and he wants to... You obviously need sort of square pegs in square holes. But how about a bit of coaching, And this is... In no way am I saying Ruben Amorim is the problem at Manchester United. I think the last sort of decade has illustrated that. But it's like, as Wilson just said, they're going to lose Kobbie Mainoo maybe, and that's an absolute... It's just a tragedy. And just like, why don't you try and teach him to do what you'd like him to do instead of, recruiting more?
Yeah. They got Burnley at the weekend at home. I mean, that feels suddenly just the absolute pressure on that game is enormous. Elsewhere in the Carabao Cup, Port Vale had a good win at Birmingham. Cambridge United, of course, beat Charlton in the presenter-producer derby, Football Weekly derby, to earn a trip to Fulham, to which Derek says, is Fulham-Cambridge in the next round the poshest tie possible? How dare you? Brighton won 6-0 at Oxford. We'll do an Oxford minute. Part 3, Robin. Everton won another game at Hill Dickinson. And Sheffield Wednesday getting past Leeds on penalties is great, Robin. You want to say that it was the reverse penalty shootout, wasn't it? It was over in like 10 seconds.
Well, because Leeds missed all of them.
Yeah.
It was 3-0 and all done. So, yeah, I mean, wonderful for Sheffield Wednesday. And I know Barry Glendenning isn't here, but he was always the one to say, when you're protesting against an owner, you need to do it properly. And they did it properly, didn't they? They didn't come in the 10th minute or whatever. They weren't there, Sheffield Wednesday fans. It was like an empty stadium. And instead they said they'll donate the ticket price to Sheffield Children's Hospital. So it's just, just a great gesture all round. The only thing I was going to say is that maybe, I don't know what the owner would think. I mean, she probably doesn't care. But they obviously won without supporters. So it's like, well,
right, yeah.
Don't need you anyway. But I just want to say I'm hugely admirable, because also I saw that apparently you do sort of miss out on points to get away tickets if you don't go to those games. So this is proper sacrifice. Yeah, well done to the Sheffield Wednesday fans.
Yeah, well done. There's some rumours of John Textor being interested. I don't know if that is. I mean, obviously Chansiri not being there is good. I don't know if John Textor coming in is good, but they just need a new owner, don't they? Of the third round ties, the fun ones: Lincoln, Chelsea, Doncaster going to Spurs, Huddersfield hosting Man City, Bradford going to the Holders, Newcastle, Barnsley hosting Brighton, and Port Vale hosting Arsenal. So some possible upsets there. Anyway, that'll do for part 1. Ewan Murray joins us for part 2 for more misery as we work out who's worse, Celtic or Rangers. Well, look, we know Rangers are worse than Celtic. You take my point. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. We have a live show on the 11th of September, the Troxy in London. Jonathan Wilson, Nicky Bandini, Johnny Liu. We've already signed up some cameos. Tickets can be purchased from theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. We are live streaming it around the world. We could do with some real ultras stepping up if you want to fill the top tier. I think the capacity is about the average attendance of Altrincham. We haven't hit it yet. And you owe us, you bastards. So come and watch us. We have big plans. The halftime show sounds very good. And one set piece, which ultimately involves a video of me that I don't really want broadcast, but it is very funny. Anyway, come along, please. theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. Charlie says, has anyone had a worse week than Scotland's coefficient? Doom says, is this the worst week for Scottish football since the last week of July in 1966? And Clayton says, it seems a cruel and unusual punishment to make Ewan Murray do Fitbar Corner this week. Welcome, Ewan. How are you?
Oh, on the contrary, I quite enjoy this stuff.
Yeah, well, you are neither a Rangers or a Celtic fan, I guess. Look, who's had a worse week? I mean, like, you can choose, Ewan. I don't know, like, recency bias. I was actually watching the Man United game, and I put in the group, have a look at the halftime score in Bruges. You're like, wow. Like, I don't know. Rangers seem to be going worse than Celtic, even though Celtic are out of the Champions League on penalties to a team I had not heard of until this week. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, to Charlie's point about the coefficient, I mean, it's not over yet. Aberdeen and Hibs have still got to play, so it could yet get worse after this goes out. I think on balance, Rangers, yes. But I mean, I don't remember the way Glasgow works. ebb and flow, yin and yang. With football, routinely one set of supporters is happy and one is outraged, and there's not very much in the middle. Occasionally, both of them are reasonably happy about something. I don't remember a time when there is collective dismay and anger the way there is just now for different reasons, but both Celtic and Rangers fans are utterly furious.
Maybe it could bring the city together. It could be harmonious. They could go to Old Firm games, sit next to each other, arm in arm, possibly.
That game's on Sunday. We won't see that. No, it won't go that far. And I also don't remember. I've been racking my brains for a managerial stint that seems as quickly as doomed as Russell Martin does at Rangers. I mean, I thought of Moyes at Man United, but I think even he got a little more leeway and grace. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Yeah, Stephen says, as a Rangers fan, my team's complete and utter incompetence has reached a point where I can only laugh at how lamentable we are. I'm guessing you'll primarily talk about Celtic being beaten by Kairat. I just want to emphasise to your audience just how rubbish Rangers are under Russell Martin. In the first leg against Bruges, we were 3-0 down after 20 minutes. In the post-match presser, Russell turned into David Brent, insisted he was proud of his players for getting it back to 3-1. What happens next? Bruges score after 5 minutes. Max Aarons, who should never be starting ahead of our club captain and legend, James Tavernier, gets sent off 3 minutes later. It boggles the mind. Yeah, 5-0 down at half-time isn't ideal. So what have you made of Russell Martin? He's an interesting character, right? And he clearly divides opinion. But sort of since arriving in the Premier League with Southampton, it has been all bad.
Yeah, and it's continuing that way. A lot of focus. There's two interesting things to me. One, the level of kind of disdain Rangers fans had for him from the outset, which is unusual. Normally they're so desperate for success at Rangers, they would give someone a chance and almost over support them. But they were very, very cool on Martin from the outset, and that's obviously only got worse as the weeks and the games have gone by. I mean, touching on the game at Bruges, it was 5-0 at half time. It could and should have been more. They were all over the place. And the other point is, so many people speak about Martin's philosophy, Martin's system, Martin's desired way of playing. Well, that's one thing, but Rangers are just so disorganised. They are defensively horrendous. I mean, it is kid stuff. So I think no matter what your system or your idealism is around football, you cannot be such a mess at the back. And that was shown up. It was shown up by a decent team. It's been shown up by, they failed to beat Dundee, St Mirren and Motherwell in the Scottish top flight. Never mind when they play a decent team in Bruges, and they just they horribly exposed that. And I mean it so early on. It seems ludicrous, but I cannot see a way, even in the medium term, that Russell Martin extricates himself from this situation.
Yeah, and because after the first game, didn't he sort of throw half the team under the bus, which seemed an interesting move?
Yes, they did it. They had a pre-season game against, I think it was Middlesbrough. I might be wrong with that, but he had a go at the way certain players warmed up in this pre-season game. That's where it kind of started. Then he had a real volley at them again. You're right in saying that at the game at Motherwell. But I mean, you look first at the management and the structure of the club. They have signed players. They've gone down a route that Rangers have tried before and it hasn't worked, which is largely players from England, largely basically championship players from England. The Rangers have tried this before and it's failed. You could swap the players they have now for previous guys from the same domain. They don't seem to get the intensity of the club. They don't seem to understand what it takes to play for Rangers. I think people at the club think it will be easier than it is for these players to assimilate. I mean, 3 of their back 4 last night were loan players as well. That's not where Rangers should be as a club. And basically, you have a team which, as I said, their defensive frailty has to be seen to be believed, but they're slow, they're passive, they're not athletic, they're not quick, they're not aggressive. The opposite of what you would want, I would suggest, from a football team. And as I say, the level of disdain and dismay towards Martin, I'm really not sure how he pulls himself out of this, including because they play Celtic on Sunday and it's very, very hard. Notwithstanding Celtic's problems, which we will come on to, it's very hard to make a case for Rangers in their current state beating Celtic.
Do you think Russell Martin is he has been good at times, right? And we were talking about Amorim and his sort of dogma, right? And it's a different dogma. And, I suppose Russell Martin can say for his faith, well, there's some evidence here that it worked at one point.
And it worked in that he took Southampton up from the Championship. Yeah. And even that was a bit of an odd season. That Sunderland beat them 5-0 or 5-1 just before they then went on a 20-odd game unbeaten run. So they were never 100% convincing even that season. But I think the Premier League is really, really difficult. I think we maybe underestimate how hard it is. And the truth is that you can't play the same way for 10 games in a row because you've got 19 of the best minds in the football world backed up with massive data analysis teams working out where are the weaknesses, what can we do to stop them, how can we exploit the little flaws they've got. And I don't think it took 10 games with Russell Martin. I think Postecoglou took 10 games. And what might be all right to win in the Championship or in a league elsewhere, the Premier League it's every single game is hard. And I think what you see, and I think what we see with Russell Martin is his confidence or his people's confidence in him was so battered by what happened in the Premier League that because his next job is in Scotland where there's at least sort of an awareness of what's happened in the Premier League, he's starting from a low base. If he'd gone to Denmark or Belgium or somewhere where people maybe haven't focused quite as closely on how he failed, or where people might even be sort of grateful that here's a Premier League manager coming to our league. I mean, it didn't work for Scott Parker in Belgium, admittedly. Maybe you then do have a chance to rebuild. But going to Glasgow, everybody knows what a failure he was, and they're just waiting for him to fail in the same way, and it's happened immediately.
Yeah.
He's seen as a fantasist, Jonathan, isn't he? He's seen as a guy who wants to implement a style of football which is just impossible. That's how that's probably possibly unfair, but that is how he is now portrayed.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair, yeah.
Sorry, Ewan, shouldn't it be possible against the other teams in the Scottish Premiership, right? Because Wilson was saying the Premier League is hard, but like he's drawn 3 games that Rangers just should win, right?
100%, and that's why he doesn't have any leeway with supporters. I mean, he speaks about pain and about process, which seemed to me like code for give me more time here. But no one would dispute a new manager and at a club which needs a big overhaul might need a bit of time to do exactly what they want to do. But in the process, you have to beat Dundee, you have to beat Motherwell, and you have to beat St Mirren. There's no excuse, not really just for the results, but for how completely disorganised Rangers have looked. And then when you, as I say, you play a decent team in Europe, the whole thing just gets amplified. So he's found himself, in that invidious position of having no wriggle room whatsoever so early on in his job.
And so Celtic then, they had a really good Champions League last year. Like the new system worked for them. They got through to that playoff, didn't they? They had some really good games. This time they're out and they were knocked out. I mean, had you heard of Kairat, Ewan?
I had. I don't know why, but I had. Yes, they must have played someone else on my radar.
Fair enough. You're a better football brain than I am.
No, I'm not. No.
But look, they went out on penalties. I mean, and Celtic must have just looked at that draw, you shouldn't be complacent. But fans, players, the manager, everyone must have thought, right, we're through here. Like this is done before the game happened.
No, the fans certainly didn't, and that
really okay.
No, because there's been this general concern and noise, and quite legitimately so, about the fact they haven't supplemented their squad since January, actually, when they lost Kyogo, who was their main centre forward, to Rennes. I know he's now going back to Birmingham, but they lost Kyogo, so they needed a centre forward. They brought in Jota, Portuguese wide player, got a bad injury. They then sold Nicholas Kuhn to Como. That's a lot of attacking threat taken out of the Celtic team. They knew they had a Champions League playoff game, and they haven't added to the squad. And there's been audible disquiet from Brendan Rodgers, even more audible disquiet from Celtic supporters. And listen, I would be the first one to say that sometimes Celtics fans can come over as entitled and spoiled, but in this case, they've completely got a point. I mean, Celtic, since Brendan's come back, they've seen beyond Scotland. They were decent in the Champions League, although the results didn't really show it in his first season back. They were very, very good last season. How many times was I on here talking about how well they did in the Champions League? They should have beaten Bayern Munich in that playoff round.
Yeah.
So they have a platform there and something to build from, and they've wasted it. And there's
why haven't they invested?
Well, this goes back to, it's quite a consistent age-old thing with Celtic. They don't seem to want to spend big, despite having tens of millions, probably 100 million in the bank. I think as a club they're possibly stuck between knowing they are dominant in Scotland and raising a level, spend a bit more that they think can make a difference in Europe. And I understand them being stuck in that position, but there's no excuse given the players they've lost, for not at least having a squad which is at the same level of last season. As they are now, it's worse, and I think that's unacceptable if you're a Celtic fan.
Yes, Mark.
Ewan, I was just going to ask, I mean, there have definitely been some Celtic fans that have just said, well, Brendan Rodgers wasted sort of the previous money and that there's been sort of nervousness around spending. I mean, is that fair as well?
It's a fair criticism. I mean, the players they bought last summer, Bernardo, Trusty, Engels, and
Ida,
sorry, exactly, yeah, £9 million. They have not made nearly enough impact in the team. I think that's fair enough. Brendan will argue that and he has argued, they supplemented the squad, which helped competition in the squad, and that they are development type players who he can make better. I think the truth is, it's always been a Brendan Rodgers weakness, I think, signing players. I think he's very, very good at certain things. I think identification and signing of players is not his strong suit. So that is a valid criticism. But, essentially, that I think we're increasingly getting to the point where Celtic and Brendan Rodgers are not compatible. They're not aligned when it comes to whatever transfer policy they want to embark on. And we've seen that this summer. I mean, Celtic, they will now sign 3 or 4 players before the end of the window, which actually will just annoy their supporters even more, because they'll say, we could have done this weeks ago. They didn't even have a backup left back for these playoff games. They end up shuffling people all over the place when Kieran Tierney, can't finish a game. So the whole thing is kind of muddled, and it's going to get to a point. I mean, Brendan's out of contract next summer. I think as we stand now, there must be zero chance that he's inclined to hang around. And it's going to go to this kind of unsatisfactory ending, which, as I say, I think is a shame given the great strides they made in European football last season.
Ange back?
Oh, Celtic would love that. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, so many of Celtic's team, Turch's and Mark's point actually, are still Ange players. Carter Vickers at the back, Hatate in midfield, Kyogo was the main man up front until January. Postecoglou came in, and I thought a key advantage of Postecoglou, apart from the fact he was an excellent coach who could succeed in Scotland, was he knew a market that Celtic could really benefit from, and the Japanese player influence at Celtic.
Yeah,
these players couldn't have gone to the Premier League, for example, and had anything like that impact. But it was a material benefit to Celtic to sign these Japanese players. Well, most of them, they had a couple who haven't worked, but mostly it was a real success for Celtic. So yeah, I mean, Celtic, I'm sure would love him back, but I suspect he'll have other offers. I also suspect he's very much the kind of guy that doesn't go back.
Yeah, possibly. From our friends at the Sweeper Pod, Kairat Almaty made history by becoming the easternmost club to ever reach the Champions League group league phase tonight. Yeah, it was 3,500 miles for Celtic to travel. So some big old trips there. Could Hearts, 7 points from 9? They've got this investment from Tony Bloom. Could they possibly take advantage of this crisis? It'd be amazing to see a team that isn't Rangers or Celtic win the top flight.
I hope so. Well, that's certainly Tony Bloom's medium-term aim, isn't it? Yeah, if you're a supporter of Hearts, which I obviously am, you hope that advantage can be taken of the state of flux that Celtic and Rangers are in. I think that'll be a longer-term process, to be perfectly honest. Celtic will spend money and strengthen, and I expect we'll win the league again. The Rangers situation, I think, is more interesting. That it depends how long that run goes on for, to be honest. That, as I said, I feel bad saying it genuinely, but I really can't see Russell Martin lasting that long. So on the basis they improve that, and again spend some money, they could sort themselves out. Possibly not before January, but I think Celtic have enough. Well, I'm pretty confident Celtic have enough domestically to win the league again. But the situation at both is the kind of thing that Bloom will have looked at in advance and thought there's opportunity there.
Chris says, can you ask Ewan what's currently big in the world of retrieval practices in mathematics? This is, once again, I tagged the wrong Ewan Murray on Blue Sky. So it's a different version of when people tag you instead of the golf commentator.
Yes.
This Ewan is a psychology PhD student at the University of York looking at using spaced retrieval practice in mathematics. So apologies, Ewan.
I couldn't tell you the square root of 149, so I've got no chance with whatever that question was.
No, 12 and a bit. Probably, isn't it?
Does it have a square? Anyway, maybe you can't square 149, can you? There you are. That's how daft I am with that stuff.
Anyway, thanks, Ewan. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Cheers, pal. Ewan Murray there, our Scottish football correspondent. And that'll do for part 2. We'll do a Premier League preview in part 3. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So then the Premier League Super Sunday 4:30 mark, Liverpool-Arsenal. This is great, isn't it?
It's great. It feels a bit early in the season. You sort of want this game, I think, later on when both teams have bedded in their new players. But it will should still be a good game. I think Liverpool defensively are not set yet, so there is an opportunity for Arsenal to go and get a positive result. I think going to Anfield in August is very different to, say, going there in April if the title's on the line. They've got this good record in recent years, Arsenal, against the big six. I will include Manchester United now for just for the sake of that. In that, there's 22 Premier League games unbeaten against the big six. A lot of draws away from home. I wouldn't be surprised if this one finished in a draw. It feels to me the kind of game where, like, not losing is probably more important than risking the win at this stage of the season. But certainly an opportunity. Like I say, I think from Arsenal's point of view, like, it's better to play Liverpool at Anfield this early in the season and have the home game later on, because it feels like a different atmosphere if you were going there sort of with the title on the line.
Robin, Saka is definitely out. Odegaard maybe. So we could see Eze coming in, which I'm fascinated to see how he goes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously very sad that he left Crystal Palace. I mean, I feel like this every summer. I feel like, can't you all just stay and then see what happens at Crystal Palace? But yeah, no, unleash Eze, and I mean, he's just going to be buzzing, isn't he? He looks so happy to be there. I just wonder, I mean, yeah, Arsenal are unbeaten in the last 6 against Liverpool. So I think I don't want to say they're going to be favourites at Anfield, and Liverpool have looked a bit shaky, but it's kind of been against teams that are more sort of counter-attacking, I think. And I'm not sure if Arsenal, that's kind of their main threat, is it? Well, it's corners, isn't it? So yeah, I guess we'll see. If Liverpool can defend corners, it might end up in the draw.
Yeah, look, we spoke about it on Tuesday after the Newcastle game, Jonathan. But it is interesting how open Liverpool appear to be.
Yeah, I mean, 6 goals conceded in 3 games so far. Although weirdly, they haven't been behind yet, which suggests the problem is when they take the lead. Well, last season they were so good at controlling games with the lead. You know, they made 2-0 their sort of trademark scoreline, and they've in both league games so far they've been 2-0 up and haven't held it at 2-0. So that suggests that the changes they've made, they struggle to get that level of control. I think it's not just personnel, but I think Kirkes has looked really shaky, surprisingly so. Kairat's had a horrible start of the season, which I think partly has to do with changes in midfield. And that shift to sort of more of a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3, it has changed roles in midfield. And I think there's maybe a hope from a Liverpool point of view that Gravenberch coming back in on Monday would just solve that straight away. Well, it didn't. So that is an issue for them. But I think if you make as many changes as they've made, there are going to be problems early on. And I think another issue they've got is that the right side, and it's obviously Frimpong getting injured, Szoboszlai having to play it right back on Monday doesn't help this. But Salah seems to be becoming detached as a result. I think Alexander-Arnold's capacity to play those quick 30-40 yard passes to release Salah, they really miss that now. Ekitike, and who knows, perhaps Isak at some point, will have to form a relationship with Salah, and I think that's easy for centre forward because part of your job with Salah is to get out of the way for him. So I think there's quite a lot of, they're not massive problems, but there's a lot of little question marks there.
Crisis game, Mark, is at the City Ground. Nottingham Forest versus West Ham. Where's the klaxon of doom going to land on all of this?
Well, I definitely think the klaxon of doom is more in East London than it is in Nottingham at the moment. Because look, if Nuno does depart the City Ground, it's an attractive job now, and I'm sure that they'll get a good manager. Postecoglou was linked to it. I think Brendan Rodgers was also being mentioned. They'll find somebody. I watched West Ham lose to Wolves, and it was not a good performance when they were winning 2-1, but it ended in just terrible fashion. Jared Bowen clashing with away supporters. I mean, I would have felt that Bowen would have been the last one that would have been the target of abuse, but definitely kind of throwing the captain's armband to the floor didn't go down well
What's worse, a shirt or an armband? I mean, on the Xhaka scale, it's not quite the whole shirt, is it?
It's not, but yeah, when a fan base is angry, it becomes angry at everything, and so most of the frustration is aimed at the owners. They've also just seen Everton move into a new stadium that immediately has got a better atmosphere than the one that they're kind of been forced to play in for the last few years, and so that kind of has been brought up again. It was forgotten about for a while they were on some decent European runs. So that's come back to the fore. We were speaking about formations and systems quite a lot in this pod, but the West Ham fans are not happy with the way that West Ham have implemented their back three. It has meant that Bowen has not played wide. They went to Molyneux, didn't play with a striker. Like they're in a bad, terrible shape. Conceding just so many goals. I mean, I'm trying to add it up now in my head. Is it 11 in 3 games? Yeah. So 11 in 3 games. Like this is a big opportunity for Nottingham Forest to get another 3 points on the board. I mean, and I'm not sure how long Potter can ride this out for, because as much as Karen Brady was on the radio recently saying that he's a good man and he'll be given time, how much time he hasn't improved him from Lopetegui. That's just clear.
Yeah, actually, she was on the show before us. Me and Barry were listening along before we went in, and she said, the thing about we've got a never say die attitude, and I didn't want to pop into the studio and go, I mean, I did watch Sunderland away yesterday, Karen. It didn't seem like that isn't how I would define never say die. I let them get on with that bit. Man City go to Brighton. It's quite interesting, Robyn, off the back of that defeat to Spurs. Because City had won the title in the first week, so
Yeah.
and now they're out of the race. Do they go back in it? Because Brighton have looked actually good in both games and haven't got a win yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was a really bad sort of second week for knee-jerk reactions, wasn't it? Because it kind of, there was a lot of that. I think, Brighton obviously had a really good confidence-boosting win over Oxford United in the Carabao Cup, having changed their whole team. And they've had the better XG in their first 2 games. But again, Barry pointing out that they don't seem to hang on to what they have or sort of finish off teams, because they can see that late equaliser to Fulham, and then they were better against Everton but somehow conceived to lose that game. So I think they can give Manchester City a run for their money, but it's just what sort of Manchester City team turns up and how well Brighton implement their game plan.
How have you felt about Sunderland, Wilson? They played Brentford at the weekend.
It's a big game. I mean, Sunderland have been granted a relatively straightforward start. So you compare, Ipswich last year started Liverpool, Manchester City, so they're on 0 points, taking potentially 2 batterings after 2 games. Whereas Sunderland going West Ham at home, Burnley away, Brentford at home, then they've got Palace away and Villa at home. So Palace away is probably the hardest of those 5. So I think on the one hand, it's an opportunity to get a good start and get a bit of confidence and belief you can exist at that level. On the other hand, if they don't get at least one more win in those next 3 games, then you're starting to think, oh, hang on, those were the easy ones, and what do we do next? So the danger always from that first game was it a case of Sunderland being good or West Ham being bad? I think it was definitely West Ham were bad. It's just you hope a little bit of it was Sunderland being good. Dan Ballard's injury is not great news. In fact, Mukiele was able to start the game against Huddersfield midweek. Well, they lost on penalties because everybody loses on penalties to Huddersfield. Huddersfield's penalty record is incredible.
Is that right?
You're aware of this, yeah.
They've
been promoted. They've won the League 2, League 1 and Championship playoffs on penalties without scoring a goal in the games. So, Huddersfield and penalty shootouts, it's the surest thing going. So, look, I think going out of the League Cup is not the worst thing in the world for a team desperate to stay up. But they probably do need a result at home against Brentford just to keep the sense of momentum.
Going out of the Carabao Cup for teams that are desperately trying to stay up is good news. So I suppose we should have said in part 1 it was good news for Manchester United. Spurs Bournemouth, Mark. How have you rated Thomas Frank's excellent start to our title-winning season?
Yeah, well, it has been an excellent start. It looked very organised. Throughout the team, clear plan and identity in each game. He's been able to change the tactics depending on the opponent. Like, I heard people on Saturday mentioning the P word, like Pochettino, and how it feels because Pochettino is just the reference point now for kind of for Spurs fans now. Like, is it as good as when Pochettino was in charge? And you kind of nobody's been able to get that balance right, like he did. Mourinho and Conte and Nuno were on one side of kind of tactics, and Postecoglou was at the other end of that scale. And like, Frank seems much more balanced, been very good in press conferences, but there's this disquiet in the background around transfers. I prefer to win football matches than transfer windows, but like, there is this belief that from a growing section of supporters now that kind of the club is being let down really, and has been embarrassed this summer in sort of the moves that they've tried to make. And if they don't sort that out in the next few days, you're going to get into the Champions League with a squad that won't be able to cope with playing sort of every Saturday and then midweek. So I think there's going to be another protest outside the ground at sort of again, a section of supporters that want a change in ownership. I won't be joining them on the march to the stadium, but I would like to see a couple of new players just to help Thomas Frank.
One of those protests, Robyn, where they protest and then go and watch a football match.
Yeah.
Chelsea, Fulham, Leeds, Newcastle. Newcastle have had a £55 million bid for translation turned down by Wolves, who play Everton. Villa play Crystal Palace as well. Robyn, let's have your Oxford United minute. In order of importance, your Oxford United minute, then Jonathan Wilson's new book.
I don't think I'm going to need a minute. Yeah, it's been a very tough start. Tough start to the season, lost every single game. So had a very big defeat to Brighton in the Carabao Cup, which was we're labelling that as a free hit, which we didn't hit anything. So yeah, tricky start.
Who's gaffer there? Is it still
Gary Rowett? So okay. I believe in Gary we trust.
Yeah.
I do think he's an excellent coach. That Oxford United, to think that he would be coaching us a couple of years ago, that would be kind of a bit fanciful. So tricky, new stadium coming in a few years. So that's very exciting. But whether we're in League One or Championship at that point, not sure. Lowest budget in the league, rightfully should really be relegated. So anything you can do is a bonus. And I understand Oxford United fans. I have a different, as someone who sort of works in the game, I know they have a more vociferous view of this sort of thing. I'm quite zen. It's still early on. I think I'm not relegating us yet, but yeah, got Coventry at the weekend, who obviously hit 7 past QPR. So yeah, we'll see.
But I do like, knowing the level of your football team, to be 2 years ago, if you'd told me Gary Rowett was managing our team, I'd have bitten your arm off. It's the thing dreams are made of. No, I agree. He's a very good manager. Come on then, Wilson. You've written your big book of World Cups.
Yeah, and I don't want to oversell it, but I think it might be the greatest book ever written.
That's good.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of worrying stats recently that people are not reading as much as they were.
Okay. This
will single-handedly change all that. This is going to make literacy cool again.
How many will you give away at the live show?
2.
2, okay.
That's not Oprah levels, is it?
Half the audience, what I hear. So.
Oh.
The big Wilson spike. You get a free Wilson book. 2 lucky winners. Okay, well, why is it good? Tell me why it's good.
So it's history of the World Cup. It's got all the stuff you'd expect in terms of the great goals, the great players, the great games, but it also gives you a lot of politico-economic, socio-cultural background and lots of detail on stories that I thought I knew, and it turned out I didn't know as well as I did. So it's a work of, if I may say so myself, monumental research written in a beautiful and moving way that'll lift the spirits and raise the hearts, maybe even bring a tear to the eye. It will be the greatest thing you've ever read.
Right, yes.
Can I say I saw, it was a delight to see Wilson in the press room at Crystal Palace last weekend, and he showed me his wedding dance video, which was
I've seen that.
Absolutely beautiful. It was very moving, and probably the most exciting thing of that was pre-match. That's probably the high point, I'd say.
There wasn't a 3-4-2-1 formation. Was there?
I thought it was a little stiff, but it was good, Wilson.
I think what you fail to understand is that
Right.
it was too Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
If you look at the way that late 19th century Russian stance, that was quite stiff. It was quite formal.
Yeah.
I think you have to bear in mind that was probably about, I don't know, about 10 p.m. by then.
Okay.
I'd say alcohol had been consumed. So
Well, no, that should loosen you up. I think without any booze, it would have been.
no, so having
like
to
a lamppost.
remember the
Yeah.
it was 2 minutes and 6 seconds. I had to remember moves.
Wow.
It took a lot of focus. I think as well. You got to remember as well. It starts with the comedy interlude of having to be begged to dance, and that was all built in.
Yeah.
And then there's the
some of the worst acting I have ever seen.
yeah, but deliberately so. That's,
right, okay, that's the Russian 19th century style.
Exactly, and then the impromptu bit where when my wife punched me in the face right at the end by mistake.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd gone down clutching my face. I think it would have been a better conclusion than one we had.
If there'd then been a melee between, both sides, and then you'd got, you must be friends with some ref, like Jeff Winter had come on.
Barry could have done the VAR sign and sort of could have put it on the big screen.
Exactly, it'd been really good.
She throws down her garter.
No, but then everyone has to wait for 20 minutes while the decision is, they're all just going, at the wedding, you don't know what's going on. No one's telling, there's no communication. We've got no idea what's happening. Anyway, well done. It was marvellous. And that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Robyn.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you, Wilson.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Max.
Football Weekly is produced by Silas Gray. Our executive producer is Joel Grove. We'll be back on Monday.
This is The Guardian.